Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, it seems that they have fallen right into Trump's trap. Remember, Trump isn't going directly at the enemy. He looks at what is going on and he sees what he needs to put into place to trap the enemy into getting what he wants. And when you start to look at Greenland, for example, what did Trump do? Trump went ahead and showed the world that Europe is not going to come to our assistance in regards to Iran or anything else. He pretty much knew they weren't going to do this because he's not part of their system. But he used this against them. They thought, oh, look, we're not going to assist and the U.S. is going to have a very difficult time with Iran. Well, that is not the case whatsoever. Basically, since he showed the world, he then could push his narrative and have the leverage that he needed to eventually get Greenland. If you don't give me Greenland, I'll be removing the troops. There'll be no money. Think about what he just did. The same thing with Iran. He gave Iran a choice. He knew that they weren't going to abide by the memorandum of understanding. But what he did was he put everything in place because he knew he was going to have to go in and finish the job. He knew eventually he was just going to have to wipe everything out that they have and make them fold. And each time they called him, he'd pretty much just hang up. Yeah, you know what? I don't believe you. Boom. You know what? Oh, you're calling again? Boom. Hang up. What did he do to set up for this moment? Number one, as we know today, he's able to see every single leader. Actually, he could see their name tags on their uniform. He knows exactly where they are. That's how good the technology is. Number two, he made sure that the oil industry wouldn't be affected this time around. He needed to test it the first time. Let me see how bad it's going to be. This is why he said, I thought it was going to be a lot worse. I thought this was going to go way, way up. But it only went up, $4 or $5 a gallon. That's not that bad. So he learned from that and said, okay, this is what we got to do. We got to make sure we have the oil. We need to make sure that we have a glut of oil on the market. He set all of this up and prepared. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, Iran, they were building their weapons. Well, what do you think Trump was doing from space? He was watching where they were building it. He was watching the factories, how they were getting any type of material. He was watching all this so they know exactly where to hit. He basically trapped them in all of this. And now they're there trying to figure this all out. Wait, we don't have control of the oil market. We can't bring down the U.S. economy. We can't make the gas prices go up as of right now. I mean, really think about this for a second. You would think that we would be somewhere around $80, $90 a barrel right now, right? Why is it going down? Why isn't it going up the way it did? I mean, I don't know how long this is going to stay this way, but I think for quite a while. I don't think this is going to take Trump that long to basically bring down the entire empire of the Iranian government, because this time he's not fooling around. This time he's going after everything. And you could see that once again, he's going to make the deep state, the central bankers, beg for a surrender. I do believe that's exactly what he's going to do. And in the end, Iran is not going to be the way it used to be whatsoever. And he won't even have to put troops on the ground whatsoever. Remember, he's taking control of everything within the Strait of Hormuz. He already has the access control within the Strait of Hormuz and Karg Island. He'll have control over this. And he'll be letting ships in and out. There will be no more insurance. There will be no more weapons. There will be no more mines. There'll be none of this left. And you know what happens once he does all of this? They all start to lose. Remember, the deep state, the central bankers, they put in place a protection system to protect their entire economic system. And that's what this boils down to, control. And basically, they thought that they would have this control for a long time. Remember, the central bank doesn't have a standing army. So they needed to put in certain protections. They gave Iran weapons. Actually, with a nuclear weapon, they'd be able to have full control over the energy sector forever. Trump and team They knew this. And this is why they were passing Iran uranium. Plus, their foot soldiers are the terrorists. Now that Trump is getting rid of all of this, they don't have this protection. They all lose. Even if, let's say, France or Germany, there was an outsider that came in and actually took over the country and was going against Iran, they don't have an army. They don't have a military that would be able to do this. I mean, look at the military of the UK. Look at the military of Germany. Look at the military of Spain. They don't have it. You see, the deep state players, they had control over the most powerful military on the planet. Now they don't. That military now is being used against them. They haven't seen this happen in a very, very long time because Trump is not part of the criminal syndicate. And everything that they put into place now can be dismantled with ease. And that is exactly what Trump is doing right now. So once Iran completely and utterly falls, they're all going to lose. You think Ukraine is going to be that much more difficult to take down? No, I think Trump is playing right into Zelensky's ego. I think he's setting him up right now. And either the EU pushes a false flag to start World War III, or there's a peace deal. Even with a false flag, it's not going to work. Actually, you'll end up with peace one way or another. And of course, one way is a little bit easier. The other way is going to be a little bit more difficult because, again, they're going to try to push war every step of the way. And like we said from the very, very beginning, I do believe when the criminals are pushed into a corner and they have nothing else left and they don't have a standing army, they don't have anything, they will push an event. And what's very interesting, out of Wired, they had this entire story of a scenario, a simulation of what happens if there was a cyber attack and they hit the water filtration systems, they hit the power grid, what would happen? And this took place in 2027. We'll be getting to that in just a sec. Now, the other thing that we could see is that the Trump administration now is putting the deep state players on notice. Harmeet Dillon is out there letting all the deep state players who are on board with cheating, listen, if you cheat, if you do any of these things and they cited the law, you will be arrested and put into jail. Just letting you know this. This is not DOJ 1.0. This is not FBI 1.0. This is 2.0. And you can't get away with it. So Harmeet Dillon sent a notice, as we said yesterday, to 50 states, but a specific one to Michigan, to Jocelyn Benson, letting her know, setting it all up, just letting you know, before you do anything, you will be arrested. You will be tried. Now, of course, Trump and his administration, they're going to do this. They're going to let them know. We warned you. Now, you make the choice. If you like to do that, that's fine. We already told you what was going to happen. Don't act surprised. But again, they're hoping with this warning that these people start to back off because they see that the FBI, the DOJ, this entire time, yes, they're going after the fraudsters. They're going after the cheaters. They're going after all these people. And will this mitigate a lot of the cheating? Oh, it will. Now, again, criminals are criminals. And you'll see some of them actually try to do this, and they will be arrested because, again, they have no morals. Other low-level people, they might say, listen, I'm not going to jail for all these people. I'm not doing this time around. So, yes, they might back off. But the upper-level players, they might say, well, if we don't do this, we're screwed anyhow, so we're going to do it anyhow. And, yes, you will see some places there was cheating, other places there wasn't cheating. So you're going to see this all play out, and you're going to see arrests. And people are going to be very, very shocked on who actually assisted in manipulating the elections, rigging the elections. And this is going to be very, very interesting. But every step of the way, you can see what Trump is doing right now. He's making it much more difficult for the deep state players to operate in this country and worldwide. He's breaking their entire system down. And in the end, they will have nothing left. Now, again, what do we have to do? We have to get rid of the judiciary coup, because when you look at the judiciary, you could see it's completely and utterly corrupt. And if we don't have control over the judges and we don't have control over the rule of law, well, you can't indict. Well, you can indict, but you can't actually have a honest trial according to the rule of law and put people away. I mean, take, for example, what happened out in Wisconsin. Remember the judge who decided to protect the illegals and she ran interference? Well, it looks like a Wisconsin judge got a slap on the wrist and she's not going to jail whatsoever. Tom Fitton says, notorious Clinton federal judge lets criminal judge off with a slap of the wrist. And this is what we would see all across the nations, because again, you have to remember the deep state players, they put in their judges, their prosecutors, their attorney generals, their politicians. They installed all these people to protect them. Remember, the deep state players and the central banking system, they put in multiple layers of protection to protect the criminal syndicate. And this is when people go, oh, I can't believe this person's getting off. Of course they are. You're inside a criminal syndicate system. Trump has been gutting the criminal syndicate system out, especially out in D.C. He removed the control from the FBI, the DOJ, DHS, CIA. Now we have Bill Pulte really gutting the DNI out. And he's removed the criminal syndicate from these different areas. And he got the Supreme Court ruling where he can then go into the different agencies and basically gut the criminal syndicate in the different agencies. But we still have a problem at the local state level because, again, and especially in the judiciary, many other places, because the executive branch just can't go into the states and say, hey, we're going to remove all of you. He just can't go into the judiciary and say, you know something, you're all fired. It's not just going to happen because, again, you need Congress for part of this. So how do we get Congress on board? Well, once again, what do you need to do? You need to get control of the House and Senate. Remember, this is not just about arresting a couple of people. This is about bringing down their entire corrupt system. That's what this is about. And you can see their system is much, much deeper and wider than anyone could ever imagine. And what are the deep state players trying to do? They're trying to get control over the flow of information. Now, in the United States, it's a little bit harder. Yes, Biden/Obama, they tried to do it. Out in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and many other places where they don't have a constitution like ours, it's a lot easier. And you can see with their entire push to say, hey, look, we don't want children under 16 using social media. Basically, what they set this whole thing up to be is, hey, every adult has to show their ID. So in the future, we can then shut down your access to the internet. The same thing with the cameras monitoring the drivers. In the future, that will be tied to your digital ID. This is what they're trying to do. And think about what they just passed right now in the EU. Even though they didn't have the votes, they actually passed it anyhow. Marian Nafal put this out and said, the EU just passed Chat Control 1.0 in Brussels. Platforms can now scan your private messages again, officially, voluntarily, in practice, blanket surveillance. Here's the Democratic scandal. 340 MEPs voted against it. Only 276 voted for it. It passed anyway because an absolute majority of all MEPs was required to reject it, not just a majority of those present. More people voted no than yes. It still passed. So basically, in EU, they have basically turned everything around. If you don't want it, then everyone has to vote for it. Think about it. It's almost like what the founding fathers fought against. Okay, you are guilty and you have to prove your innocence. So if you shot someone, you have to prove that you didn't do it, which is very, very difficult to do. So they pretty much did the same thing in the EU. And this is why it was able to be pushed through, because again, it's a rigged system. So now they're going to be looking at everyone's chats. They're going to be monitoring everything, monitoring you in the car, monitoring you on social media, monitoring you everywhere, because they want control over the information that's going around. They want to know what's going on. It reminds me of V for Vendetta. Remember the van that used to drive around the UK and they had like listening devices listening to everyone's conversation? And once they realized what people were saying, they went in and they put a hood on them and they took them away. Well, this is pretty much what they're doing. They're going to be monitoring everyone to make sure that there are no people opposing their narrative. And if you are opposing or against their narrative, they come and get you. This is what they're setting up. And they're smiling while they do this. Remember, this is a criminal system that they operate. That is what you're witnessing right now. And think about this. Trump now is putting a lot of pressure on the EU countries. He knows the EU countries. He knows that the installed leaders, they're the enemy. I'm not talking about the people in each one of these countries. I'm talking about the leaders who were installed in these positions. He knows they are bad news. He knows they're part of the system that he's fighting against. And when he announced that all trade with Spain is going to be shut down, he sent a very, very clear message to the deep state players. You want to play the game? This is very, very easy. We're going to remove ourselves from NATO. We're going to shut down trade. Good luck. Nick Sorter put this out and said, and this is coming from Trump, Spain was very generous today. You know, I told them I'm going to stop trade. What did Spain do today? They honored a request for lots of payments. And if they didn't, we wouldn't even talk to them. So basically, Spain folded in a blink of an eye. Absolutely incredible. And think about what Trump is doing with Greenland. He knows that he wants the entire northern hemisphere around America. And this is for long-term protection. And he's been talking about Greenland for quite a while, also making Canada the 51st state. But Greenland is very, very important. And basically, Trump threatened to withdraw troops from Europe if they don't make a deal with the United States on Greenland. And think about what Trump has set up here. He set up a scenario where he has the leverage. How did he get the leverage? Well, he showed that NATO, the EU nations, did not assist the U.S. during the Iran excursion. Now he's using that leverage, saying, I guess you don't need our troops. You don't need our money. Maybe we should pull out of NATO. But if you give us Greenland, I will think about keeping the troops and the money in Europe. Remember, he knows the deep state players. What do they want to do? They want to start a war with Russia. They know that over this long period of time, they really don't have the military that they actually really need to fight anything. They were laundering the money through NATO. They were depending on the United States. Because remember, the United States, going back in time before Trump, they were part of this entire criminal syndicate system. So everything was great. Trump now basically went down a path to show everyone that, listen, we don't need these people. They don't do anything for us. And NATO is a waste of time. He's using this now against them. And he had to take the long way around, but he got the leverage that he needed. You think this was just by accident? You think he just said, hey, I'm going to just try to wing this one? No, he planned it out from the very, very beginning. Same thing he did with the Iranians. And it's not just the Iranians. You have to remember, it's the deep state, the central bankers, Europe, that is protecting and pushing their agenda. This is why they didn't want to assist. They didn't even want us to use their airfields because, again, they're part of the system. Just like with Ukraine. Ukraine, they protect Ukraine. They fund Ukraine. They support Ukraine. They also support Iran in the background. This is why they didn't want to assist. And what's very interesting is all the people in Iran who are taking to the streets, went to the funeral. Once again, why do you think there were people there? Well, Karma Patriot explains. If the Iranian people don't come out and support the regime in the streets, they are murdered. January 26, 2026, protests erupted in Iran on December 28, 2025. People across the country, outraged at decades of repression, were demanding fundamental change in a political system that respects human rights and dignity. Iranian authorities have responded with an unprecedented, deadly crackdown since January 8th, 2026, cut all internet access to conceal their crimes. Security forces have used unlawful force, firearms, and other prohibited weapons against protesters, which resulted in mass killings and serious injuries. January 27, 2026, the killing of 36,500 Iranian people in just 2 days presented a scale of violence without precedent in the history of repression under the Islamic Republic. So basically, what do? They threaten the people. You do not do what we say, we will kill you. And yes, there are you still have the IRGC within Iran. They still have the weapons. They still have a force. Remember, a population without weapons, you could be controlled very, very easily. You could be killed very, very easily. And this is when you see all the people out in the funeral. You don't think they were forced out there? Absolutely. And you could see Iran is doing whatever they possibly can, because the deep state, the central bankers, the EU, they're instructing them to target Bahrain, target Kuwait, target Jordan. Try to hit them. Do whatever you possibly can to stay in power. But think about what Trump is doing right now. He's hitting over 150 targets right now. And he's hitting very, very specific targets. Drone manufacturing, radar systems, missile systems. And Trump, he's taking out the little speedboats with the same weapons they used with Venezuela. So basically, the small little Iranian small craft that Tehran calls their mosquito fleet, the same missiles it uses to destroy narco-terrorist drug boats in the Caribbean, Trump said we're using them on them. You think that was a test run? You think he said, okay, let's see if this works. Let's take out the narco boats. These are pretty darn fast boats. Oh, wow, that's pretty easy. So let's see. These are pretty much the same type of boats that Iran has. So we can use this technology out there. This is going to be great. We could pick them off one at a time. And this is exactly what they're doing. And think about what else Trump has done. Marin Nafal put this out. The U.S. hit Iran's Jabbar port overnight. And this footage shows what's left of its maritime control tower. The tower ran ship traffic in and out of Iran's only deepwater ocean port, the one that lets it bypass the Strait of Hormuz entirely. Taking it out is aimed squarely at Iran's grip on the water. Chabahar is also India's flagship trade project in Iran, which means New Delhi just watched years of investment take a direct hit. So Trump just removed the tower that controls the ships going in and out. Who's taking control of the Strait of Hormuz? Trump had control of the axis, who can go in, who can go out. Now he's removing everything else that they had before. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, local officials have now confirmed that U.S. strikes indeed targeted Iran Shahrar Airport Air Base in the southeastern Iranian city of Iran Shahrar, which is partially utilized by the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force. That is all gone. And the other thing that's very interesting is Trump has revealed that U.S. Space Force has cameras in orbit that can read the badge of an Iranian officials entering the nuclear sites. Why would they come out with that information? Why would they tell the world that? Think about it for a second. Awaken Outlaw explains, the reason you burn this capability by admitting it publicly is if you already have what you need. This is more along the lines of telling them that they're already screwed. And that's exactly what it is. He's pretty much sending the message, listen, we know everything. We've been tracking you. We know exactly where you are. We know exactly what you've been doing. Game is over. And Trump says, and he shows a picture of the Jabbar in Iran in flames. He says, this is in retribution for yesterday's bombing of ships by Iran. If it happens again, it will get much worse. So Trump is sending them a very, very clear message. And think about what Trump did, because he knew the deep state players. He knows the deep state players. He knows they're violent. He knows they're crazy. He knows they're not going to give up. He knows that they'll keep pushing to the very end. We said this multiple times. It's not just the criminals in this country. It's the deep state players around the world. It's the same people. The people out in Colombia, in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Ukraine, in Iran. This is all the deep state players, the installed leaders in all these different countries. This is all the deep state players. And yes, they will fight to the very end. They will play a role and make you think that, no, they're doing this for the greater good. Oh, no, we're on Trump's side. They're liars. They're fakes. They're phonies. Trump knows this. He knows exactly who these people are. He's playing the game, and he's basically using art of the deal, art of the war, to get the leverage that he needs. Think about what he did with Iran. Daniel Kyle put this out and said, Trump understood Iran would eventually breach the MOU. That's why it wasn't a deal. That's why the deal was fully conditional. He bought time for Iranian crude to pile up at sea due to lack of buyers. He gave Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Oman time to deepen alternatives to Hormuz and secure supply. He strengthened U.S. domestic energy security. He waited for OPEC Plus output increases to make Iran weaker and Hormuz less central. The U.S. never trusted or gave strength to Iran. It was a strategic move to solidify alternatives and Gulf nations' options. Many will not recognize it, but it is a solid strategy. Because again, think about what he said from the very, very beginning. When we went in the first time, we thought oil was going to go much higher. He tested the system. He wanted to see how high oil was going to go. He knew that he was going to be able to bring oil down very, very quickly. That was going to be a problem. He wanted to see what the bottlenecks were. He wanted to see, okay, is it the oil companies? Is it the retailers? Who's controlling all of this? Just like he did with the meat packing, just like he did with the egg producers. He needed a little bit of time to see what was really going on. And the only way to do this is to test certain things to see. So you can put everything into place to counter what they're trying to do. And that's exactly what he did. See, all these idiots out there on the fake news and these war experts, they all thought, oh, Trump doesn't have the upper hand. Oh, Trump. Oh, look, he's making a deal. He didn't get anything. No, he knew exactly what he was doing. He was playing them. And now he's still playing them. Because what do you think he's probably going after? He's going after the oil. This is running their system. This is what the system is based off of. Yes, they're trying to move all the countries off of this system so they can fully control the system. Think about it for a second. Think about it. If all the other countries are dependent on wind and solar, and the deep state, the central bankers, have control of all the oil of the world, who has the upper hand? Think about it for a second. So what does Trump need to do? He needs to get control over this. He needs to shut them down once and for all. James E. Thorne says, after Hormuz, Trump should squeeze Karg. President Trump has already changed the global energy chessboard by forcing the Strait of Hormuz back toward navigability and backing the effort with military pressure. He has shown that Iran does not get a permanent veto over the world's most important energy choke point. That alone is a strategic reversal. Now comes the harder question. What follows when diplomacy stalls and Tehran keeps testing limits? The answer is Karg Island. Trump himself has repeatedly put Karg on the table, threatening to strike or even seize Iran's main oil export hub if Tehran refuses the deal and keeps jeopardizing shipping lanes. This is not bluster without logic. Is it time to finally act? Karg handles the overwhelming majority of Iran's crude oil exports. It is the regime's cash register, the hinge between oil revenue and coercive power, and the central source of discounted barrels flowing to China. If Hormuz is being secured for global commerce, it makes little sense to leave Tehran's principal export lifeline untouched. The right next step is not a sprawling occupation. It is a sustained campaign to shut Karg down as a functioning commercial hub. Tighter interdictions of tankers tied to Iran's lifting, harsher insurance and routing restrictions, and continued strikes on the military assets that shield terminal operations. That would align means an end, keep the waterway open for everyone else. Now Iran's ability to monetize defiance, increase the cost to China of treating sanctioned Iranian crude as cheap strategic side deal. Trump likes leverage, and Karg is leverage. He has already demonstrated that hard power can reset the diplomatic table. The next stage is to prove that when Iran drags out talks and tests ceasefire, Washington can move from securing the choke point to squeezing the revenue stream behind the provocation. After Hormuz, Karg is where pressure should move next. Well, think about what he did in the last strike. He hit the weaponry around Karg. He dismantled their systems, their mine laying, and everything else. Think about why he's doing this. Because basically, slowly but surely, he's setting it up that when the time comes, the U.S. will be able to control Karg. Now, does this mean an all-out battle with massive troops on the ground? I don't even think it will be that hard. I think slowly but surely, as they destroy all their weaponry, their defenses, and everything else, they won't even be able to see anything coming at them. Because again, most of those individuals on the island, they're either going to fight, they will die, or they will surrender because they'll have nothing left. And in the end, Trump will control the entire region. And Iran, sitting off to the side, who needs it? Nobody does. Karg Island is the most important part of it. And ships can come in and go out, and they can get the oil when they need it. And again, you don't need troops through the mountains. You don't care about the government over there. Remember, he's destroying all their weapons. They'll have nothing left. The ships will be sitting right outside of Iran, guarding Karg Island. I mean, if it comes to this. And I do believe this is part of the strategy. And you can see we're heading in that direction. Now, Trump yesterday said something very interesting, which we kind of all knew, is that the deep state players, Iran and the rest, they want to kill Trump. And Trump decided to do a switcheroo with his plane, and he decided to use the old VC-25A Air Force One at the recommendation of the U.S. Secret Service following the hostilities with Iran. So think about that. Why did he do that? Well, it's a precaution. And you have to remember, he did it on purpose because, why? Because they might try to kill him. Trump says, we just landed and met with our new Air Force One, which was sent earlier to RAF Mildenhall, so we could show the wonderful service members as per the entire base's request. They were very excited, picture enclosed. It was on our way back to the States from Turkey with virtually no deviation of flight path. President DJT. So people are like, oh, look at this. He did this on purpose. No, this is standard protocol, by the way. When he goes anywhere, he has two beasts. And when he leaves the country, he has two planes. It's done on purpose. Awaken Outlaw explains. Dual plane operations are standard protocol for presidential foreign travel. Two Air Force One planes are used during foreign travel primarily for security, redundancy, and uninterrupted operations. The backup aircraft acts as an immediate replacement in case of mechanical failure, serves as a decoy, and carries extra support staff, equipment, and security personnel. The use of the two identical or supporting jets ensures the president can travel without risk of being stranded in a foreign country due to technical or security issues. The secondary plane stays with the presidential fleet, so the commander-in-chief is never left without secure transport. Now, he used this to his advantage because, once again, if there are threats against you, you can use it and people don't know where you are. They have no idea. Think about that for a second. And think about what Trump did when he was meeting with the NATO leaders. He struck Iran while he was there. Sent a very, very strong message. Observing consciousness. This is art of the deal fused with game theory under live fire. Iran struck first, then Trump hit them hard while standing in Turkey, with NATO watching, with the Middle East watching, with the whole world board watching. Then Iran called, wanting the deal back. That tells you the pressure landed. Trump knows the first call is only information. The real move is making Iran prove whether they want peace, or simply want relief from the consequences of their own escalation. That is the ante going up and leverage doing its job. Iran made the move. Trump changed the game. Absolutely. And think about it. Trump, he's letting everyone know Iran keeps calling. Trump War Room put this out and said, President Trump says Iran called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal. That's the problem. And you know what? I do believe what he's going to do is he's going to say, keep calling, let them call, but keep bombing them at the same time. Keep hitting them hard and let them continually call. And think about it. The MOU that he gave them before, oh, it's just going to get a lot worse for them. They just blew it. You think he's going to go right back to that? Or do you think the deal is going to get worse and worse for them as time goes on? I think it's going to get worse and worse for them. Now, like we said from the very beginning, I do believe the deep state players, when all said and done, they will try some major event. And I think it's a cyber attack. I mean, I could be wrong. It could be nothing. Nothing might happen. But again, we saw what they did back in 2020 when they realized that, hey, if we don't get rid of Trump, we're screwed. So they went all out and they unleashed a virus that really didn't do us harm. And they had the whole world coordinate. And we know the World Economic Forum, they've been basically simulating cyber attacks. They've been telling us that the cyber attack is the next big event and it's going to hit pretty soon. And I do believe that Trump and team, they're prepared for this if it does occur. I'm not saying it's going to. And what's very interesting is that Wired magazine, they actually had a simulation of what would happen if China hacked the U.S. water supply. Andy Greenberg says, I sat in a closed-door war game where insurance execs simulated a cyber attack against U.S. water utilities by Volt Typhoon, Chinese state hackers who have been penetrating U.S. critical infrastructure since at least 2023. The results were catastrophic. So in Andy Greenberg's July 8, 2026 Wired article, the author recounts attending a closed-door war game in which roughly 30 anonymous insurance executives role-played their response to a fictional July 2027 Chinese cyber attack on 5,000 U.S. water utilities. The simulation, facilitated by former CISA strategist Joshua Corman and co-hosted by Cyber AccuView, portrayed China's Volt Typhoon hackers, a military link group known for living off the land intrusions into critical infrastructure since at least 2023. They exploited network device vulnerabilities amid a ransomware surge and rising Taiwan tensions. The attackers not only disrupted IT systems, but triggered physical damage, burst water mains, loss of pressure, and cascading failures affecting hospitals, forcing evacuations, data center cooling, refrigeration, drug chemical manufacturing, and other sectors. Participants struggled with the scarce responders, prioritization dilemmas, customer notification, active war, insurance exclusions, and limited government support, ultimately confronting massive financial losses and casualties. The exercise underscored Volt Typhoon's ongoing pre-positioning for widespread societal chaos in a conflict, the extreme difficulty of responding at this scale, and the urgent need for stronger preventative cybersecurity measures in undersecured municipal utilities. So it's very interesting that they picked the date of July 2027. And again, they're using simulations, just like the World Economic Forum had similar simulations. So once again, I do believe most likely they're trying to get an event off the ground. Does it mean it's going to happen? No, but I think they're going to try to push it. Remember, we're in a war. It's an information war. They're trying to move it into a physical war. And again, everything always doesn't work out perfectly. This is why you have game theory, because again, if something doesn't work out, you move to something else. And then Trump uses game theory to counter or adjust to what they're trying to do. So again, nothing is ever perfect when you're fighting a war. And that's exactly what we're still in. We're still in a war. Trump is still battling the deep state players. And it's made up of Iran. It's made up of Ukraine. It's made up of Cuba. It's made up of the cartels, the terrorists. It's the infiltrators in this country, the foot soldiers that they brought in, the fake news, those people that are installed in certain positions in government. We're still fighting this war. And again, without destroying the entire system, and if we don't destroy the entire system, we leave it intact, and we just arrest a couple people, the system is going to reproduce others that are going to fill those spots. So this is why Trump is taking this approach and exposing the communists, exposing the infiltrators, exposing all of them. And think about it. Who's being exposed every step of the way? The mayor of New York City, those in Minneapolis, out in California, Chicago, you name it. And think about what Mamdani just did. Mamdani made a map of New York City immigrant neighborhoods, and he left out key neighborhoods. Geiger Capital says little Palestine, little Bangladesh, little Yemen, and little Africa managed to make the map. Yet no Irish or Italians. Not even the Jewish population. There's a very big Jewish population there. So let's see, Irish. How about little Italy? No, nothing. Isn't that interesting? What does that tell you? It tells you everything you need to know. He's letting everyone know. You think it was by accident? He's letting everyone know the infiltration is working. And this is the message that he's putting out there. And I think it was done on purpose. Absolutely. And think about it. Their candidate, who's a Nazi and who's accused of raping people, he decided he was going to bow out. So it looks like he wasn't able to blackmail the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party used democracy to remove him. Lives of TikTok explains, Democrats just replaced the duly elected candidate who 156,000 people voted for. The same thing they did with Joe Biden, the party of democracy. It almost looks exactly like the EU when they voted to spy on everyone's DMs, emails, and everything else. Oh, we didn't get the votes? Well, you need the majority to reject it. So looks like we won. I mean, think about it. Think about how that works. No matter what the vote is, you're never going to get the majority. It's impossible. They set up a no-win situation, basically. Unbelievable. Clandestin says, so let me get this straight. The Dems happily ran a literal Nazi, who also happens to be a serial rapist, and now after they endorsed him and he won the primary, they forced him out, so the party gets to choose the candidate. The Dems used a Nazi to circumvent democracy. Again, absolutely. And once again, when you look at communism, when you look at socialism, and this is what they're pushing here, they've been here for a very long time, they've been pushing this. I think Gunther Eagleman has a very simple question about socialism and communism. He says, if socialism and communism lift people up, why do millions risk drowning, bullets, and everything else to escape? Cuba, over 1+ million fled since 1959. Venezuela, 7 to 8 million gone under 21st century socialism. East Germans, millions bolted west before the wall. 100+ died trying to cross it. North Koreans still defecting despite death penalties. How many people are going into these countries? Nobody. Think about that for a sec. That tells you everything you need to know. Now, the other thing that we could see is Trump and team, they know that Antifa, and Antifa is not just in this country, it's throughout the world. They know the deep state players are going to be using Antifa to push riots in all the different cities across the world. We saw it during BLM. It was all out in Europe. And Rubio right now is trying to enlist other nations in the Antifa fight. But some allies, some installed leaders don't want to do this. Think about why they don't want to do this. I think that should tell you everything you need to know. And the event has unsettled some U.S. and European officials because, again, they back these people. And the criminal syndicate, the people that are working for the criminal syndicate that are installed in these positions, they're not going to go after Antifa because they're part of the criminal syndicate. So they would never do this. Now, Rubio's going to try as best he possibly can. And we know within this country, they're setting up countermeasures to shut them down. They already designate them as a terrorist organization. So when they push the insurrection, and we know that DSA, they've been pushing the idea that they're ready to attack the empire of the United States, which is an insurrection. We know that Trump can use the military to basically shut this down. The Supreme Court already gave him the ruling. They already gave him the ruling for the Insurrection Act. They already gave him the ruling for the Alien Enemies Act. This is why he plans this out way in advance, because he knows what's coming. He knows the playbook. And he's preparing for all of this. Now, the other thing is we could see the trial with Tyler Robinson is continuing on. And we could see that everything that these ridiculous people put out, all the lies and everything, it's all starting to fall apart around them. And all their lies are being debunked right now because of the trial. Canico at the Crate put this out, said, Candace Owens has claimed the U.S. military, French legionnaires, Egyptian planes were all involved in Charlie's murder, while Tyler Robinson is an innocent patsy who never set foot on UVU's campus. And we know that's fake. We know he's been there multiple times. So let's compare the evidence. For Robinson's guilt, video placing him and his car there. Video of him crawling prone to the sniper's perch at the exact moment Charlie was shot. Identified by his own parents. Confessed multiple times. A photo of the confession note he left with twigs. Turned himself in. His gun recovered near campus. His text about retrieving that gun. His DNA on the rooftop. The gun, the towel, and the screwdriver. The Dremel he used to engrave his bullets. Cell phone location data, on and on and on. For Candace's claims, so here's the real question. For the people still supporting her claims, do you actually believe the U.S. military, French legionnaires, Egyptian planes were involved in Charlie Kirk's murder? If you do, show your evidence and compare it to everything above. If you don't, why are you still supporting someone who has lied to you about Charlie and how he was murdered? At this point, it's an IQ test, and the result is public. Absolutely. And Tyler Robinson admitted to Twigs that he killed Charlie Kirk. He said, "I wish I hadn't done it," began crying, and eventually stated he would go to his parents' house or turn himself in. Twigs testified that Robinson left around 4 a.m. on the 10th to work and left a note on Robinson's keyboard. Twigs says Tyler mentioned engraving the bullets to him. Text messages show Robinson further admitted his guilt. Text confirmed Robinson was waiting near UVU to retrieve the rifle after police left the scene. Text confirmed Robinson wrote, "Some hate can't be extinguished out." And he even admitted he needed to kill him. And once again, you can see that all the evidence points to him. He even admits it. He even admits carving. The text messages are very, very clear. So once again, what was this all about then? I do believe Candace, is my personal opinion, I think she has an issue with Erica, has an issue with Turning Point. I do believe she's a woman scorned. I do believe she thought she should have been running the whole operation. And basically, she just went after them because she was angry. She's an angry person. Now, is she backed by anyone else? Don't know. But again, you could see this was bringing people down a path, and it was the wrong path. And everyone was losing sight of pretty much everything. Our mission is to take back this country. And again, if we don't do it, all is lost. If we don't win the House, if we don't win the Senate, how are we going to complete the rest of the plan? How are we going to basically stop the deep state players? How are we going to create laws? How are we going to remove the judiciary? How are you going to have accountability? How are you going to do any of these things? You won't be able to. Remember, we were told over and over and over that we must succeed no matter what. There's no other way. And Trump knows this. Why do you think he stayed in the game? Why do you think he never quit? I mean, look, Graham Plattner just quit. You know why? He doesn't care about anything. He's not a fighter. Trump never gave up. Everything that they threw at him, every single thing, Russia collusion, indictments, impeachments, even assassination attempts, everything, never gave up because he knows the mission. The mission is what? To take back this country from the deep state players, to destroy the deep state players. That's what this is all about. And putting the rule of law back into place, putting the control back to the people. Remember, the deep state players had a very long time creating this massive system that you've been living in. And they've been controlling you every single day. You think you're free. You really don't know what freedom really is until you see and taste and feel the freedom. You see, when someone tells you, hey, you earn that much, you must give this much to a private West Central Bank system. That's not freedom. When someone tells you, oh, by the way, you can have that gun, but you're going to have to wait for it. Oh, by the way, you can't have that gun or that gun. That's not freedom. When they try to censor you on social media, is that freedom? No. So basically, we haven't tasted full freedom. We've been controlled this entire time. And Trump now is trying to remove that control, trying to remove that brainwashing so people experience full freedom. And this is what he's doing right now. And what's very interesting is that the situation with McConnell is very, very interesting. And let's see how this all plays out, because once again, you can see they're not revealing if he's okay or not okay. Now, yes, we've had certain individuals say that they spoke to him. But again, how do we know he's okay? How do we know he's functioning? We don't. But I do believe at this point what they're trying to do, and I think with their staffers, the donors, the lobbyists, and all these other people, I think they're trying to make sure that his seat is not given away, that there's no special election. And I think in the future, the term limits are not just going to work with the deep state players. I think there should be term limits for consultants, staff, and anyone else. Because again, the deep state players are made up of those people in the agencies, those staffers. And I think there also needs to be term limits for that, for them. They shouldn't be in these positions forever. And because again, if you have them in these positions, what does it do? It breeds corruption. So I do believe this needs to be shut down also, because all you got to do is look at the corrupt judiciary right now. Judge Sparkle, you know how there was another judge from Florida who ruled against her? Well, she says, screw you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my ruling intact. And of course, the other judge is like, no, you can't do that. And she is resisting. It's almost like when Emmett Sullivan with General Flynn, when the DOJ says, all right, we don't have a case. And Emmett Sullivan said, you know what? I know I'm the judge. Now I'm the prosecutor. And I'm going to try this case. She's doing pretty much the same thing. They're not following the rule of law. They're continually pushing back. And this is how you know they're deep state. This is how you know it's a corrupt system. And they're being instructed by the deep state players. Either they're blackmailed, they're getting kickbacks, you name it, but they're part of the system. And the other thing that we could see is Harmeet Dillon. She has now put Michigan's Dirty Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, on notice. Warns she and local election officials are subject to criminality for knowingly allowing non-U.S. citizens to remain on the voter rolls. So this was a letter that was specifically written to her. Yes, she also wrote it to the 50 states. And you can see the deep state players, they're making a very big deal about having election monitors at the primaries. But again, go back a little bit in time. This has been done many, many times before. It's in the law. Harmeet Dillon says, recent civil rights primary election monitoring. Biden 2022, 9 jurisdictions. Biden 2024, 27 jurisdictions. Trump 2026, 15 jurisdictions. Number of Mark Elias posts whining about the Justice Department doing routine work to enforce federal law under Biden, 0. That tells you everything you need to know. And the other thing that's very interesting is that we know that FISA, the 702 surveillance, expired on June 12th. But something very interesting about this, if you notice, has the world fallen apart? Is anyone really complaining about it? Well, that's because there's something else with FISA. Even though Congress didn't renew it, they're still collecting information. The conservative treehouse put this out and said, despite the statutory expiration, the intelligence collection continues under the FISA court's annual certifications, which were renewed in March 2026 and remained valid through March 2027. The annual certification allowed the government to continue collecting communication from foreign targets and querying the Section 702 database, including incidental U.S. communications, without interruption. Essentially, the surveillance program operates on a separate certification clock that is independent of Congress's statutory timeline. That's a remarkable workaround. So right now, FISA is still operational. It was never shut down. Isn't that interesting? Now, the other thing that we could see is it seems that Trump now has evidence that birthright citizenship should not be allowed. This is what he put out on Truth. Signs and billboards are being put up all over southern border and Mexico, advertising birthright citizenship with delivery starting at $4,000. Likewise, similar signs going up all over the country. Billions of dollars will be illegally made by this scam. With citizenship going to anyone willing to pay, it will be by far the number one way of becoming a citizen, and then the entire family will be allowed to follow. Not sustainable. Nobody saw this coming. American citizenship is not for sale. In fact, that is a crime, and therefore the Supreme Court ruling is wrong. I will be asking for a rehearing by the United States Supreme Court immediately. This miscarriage of justice will destroy America if they don't change their absolutely insane decision. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. And yes, there are billboards that are going up. Nick Sorter put it out, and it shows exactly what he says. And once again, this is not sustainable. So Trump now has indicated that the United States will seek a rehearing of the Supreme Court on birthright citizenship. Rule 44 allows 25 days to seek rehearing. It requires the support of at least one justice from the majority and is rarely granted. And a majority is required, but the majority must include one justice who concurred in the judgment decision initially. And think about what Justice Thomas wrote. He wrote a 91-page dissent. And when you look at the billboard, it seems that he was right. And let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting moving forward. Now, the other thing that we could see that's very interesting is we know the deep state players, both the rhinos and the Ds, they don't want to get rid of the filibuster. Why? Because it gives them control over the system. Rick Scott explains, here's why people in both parties don't want to use or lose the filibuster. Control. Hiding behind the 60-vote threshold and the cloture rule makes it easier to control the chamber, control debate, and control the schedule. That way, there are no surprises, and everyone gets to leave town after lunch on Thursday without fail. Open debate, open amendments, and majority threshold make things less predictable. And that makes comfortable people uncomfortable. If we want to secure our elections and pass the rest of the American First agenda, we're going to need to shake some things up. And that is absolutely true. And I do believe, once again, Trump is waiting for the very, very end to do this. Joe Lange explains, and he's pointing to Real Robert. And in this, you have Thune being interviewed, and it says, for the first time in modern American history, the President of the United States is blocked from making any recess appointments. Joe Lange says, can I give a different perspective on this story? First, I would like to point out that Trump doesn't seem bothered by this development at all. He rarely, if ever, mentions it. You would think that he would be constantly complaining about it since he's being treated worse than any other president. Trump doesn't care. Why? Trump already has the people in place that he needs to accomplish what's coming. Here's something else. Why doesn't Trump go after Thune personally, like he has against backstabbing Massey and MTG? Trump continually demands that the SAVE Act be passed. It's part of the narrative war. It allows the Trump administration to bash the Democrats for preventing its passage. It keeps the fraudulent election in the media narrative, and it also sets the table to remove the filibuster. Trump is now connecting the SAVE Act passage to removing the filibuster, killing two birds with one stone. Have you noticed that when Trump demands the SAVE Act passage and removal of the filibuster, he doesn't bash Thune? Trump doesn't refer much to Thune, and when asked, says things like he's disappointed in Thune, not angry. That's signal. Is everything planned and timed? When would be the best time to pass the SAVE Act? Before or after Trump reveals all the evidence of the stolen election in 2020? Isn't it obvious that the best time would be after the stolen election is revealed? Why? Because if you think the number of Americans supporting voter ID and citizenship requirement is now high, just wait until the stolen election is revealed and our entire nationwide election system is proven to be fraudulent. The number of Americans who are demanding the Senate pass the SAVE Act will increase, and it will also dominate the media narrative. But the evidence will then be used in court to completely transform our entire election system in every state, protecting the constitutional rights of the American people. And when would be the best time to get rid of the filibuster? Before or after the stolen election in 2020 is revealed? Wouldn't it be the best time? Be after? Why? Because Trump would be killing two birds with one stone and, at the same time, blaming the Democrats for both stealing the election and standing in the way of fixing the election system. I'm pretty sure the Democrats aren't going to support the SAVE Act, even after the stolen election is revealed. That will be the impetus to remove the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act with a simple majority. Checkmate. If I had to guess, this is all setting up for after the August recess in Congress and will be the biggest October surprise to ever hit the Democratic Party. But I think it kicks off in September and leads to mass arrests that happen in October. The stolen election was treason. It is going to trigger the prosecution phase involving many conspiracies. Revealing the stolen election in 2020 legally is going to change everything. And what are the odds that important Q drops are pointing to October? Q drop 1. Hillary Clinton will be arrested between 7:45 a.m. 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, the morning of October 30th, 2017. That's coming from an Anon on the board. Hillary Clinton extradition already in motion, effective yesterday with several countries in case of cross-border run. Passport approved to be flagged and effective 12:01 a.m. Expects massive riots organized in defiance and others fleeing the U.S. to occur. U.S. Marines will conduct the operation while National Guard activated. Proof check, locate a National Guard member and ask if activated for duty 10:30 across major cities. That was the first Q drop. The exact date isn't important. What's important is October and nowhere to run. Q drop 2301, September 30th. Red October, stay tuned and watch Q+. Then this. Q drop 4756, September 24th. Anon says, Red October upcoming? Make your depth 50 feet, zero bubble. Q. Attack mode in October. Prosecution phase? And I do believe, yes, we're going to see a Red October. Yes, we're going to see all this put into place. Now, the arrests, I'm not sure if it's going to be October. I think, yes, they will try to push certain things during October, but again, or during the elections. But again, I'm not sure when the actual riots will occur because, again, Nancy Pelosi and the rest, they've been saying they're going to be using other tactics to try to delay the election results after the elections. Now, they might have the riots during this period of time, but I'm wondering if they're going to be waiting too much later because, again, like we just said, there was a cyber attack simulation in 2027. So I do believe that once they lose the midterms, which I do believe they realize right now, and they know their internal polls, they know their cheating system, they know they don't have the ability that they used to have, and I do believe they know this at this point. So I think they're putting all their efforts right now into probably shutting down and hoping to get back into control in the presidential race, which means that they're going to be pushing the major event during the presidential race. And I think this is why the simulation said 2027. I think this is what they've been planning to do. And every step of the way, yes, would they like to have the midterms? Would they like to get just the House, just to get the Senate? Or they would really love to have both. But I think it's not possible. Even if they get the House, it's going to be very difficult for them. Because, again, you really can't do that much because if you don't control the Senate, everything's blocked. If the Republicans get control of the House and the deep state players have the Senate, everything is blocked. So Trump knows he needs to get both. And the deep state players know they need to get both to remove Trump. Now, if they can't remove Trump during the midterms, they know that it's a lost cause. Will they try to delay it? Yeah, they will. Do they need riots at that point? I don't think so. I think they'll need it because they'll know that their only chance is coming up in the next presidential election. Because you have to remember, once we get control of the House and Senate, Trump can move forward with the plan, which means they have no ammunition, they have no leverage, they have nothing. They're cornered, they're backed, they're trapped, which means the only thing that they have left to do is push a main event. That is it. Will it consist of cyber attacks? Will it consist of riots? Most likely, yes. And I think that's what they're pushing for. But again, we don't know. But we know it is coming because Trump wouldn't go to the Supreme Court to get the Insurrection Act. He wouldn't go to the Supreme Court to get the Aliens Enemy Act. He wouldn't do all these things. He knows the timing. He knows the playbook. But we know that he did all this because he knows it's coming. So we know it's coming. We just don't know the exact time.